right. Well, welcome everyone to our lunchtime webinar. It might be breakfast for some of you. It's our immigration update, where we are and where we are going. My name is Meg Olson and I lead up the grassroots mobilization team here at Network Lobby. But our primary speaker, our main speaker today is Ronnate Asirwatham, and she is our Director of Government Relations. Just so you know, this webinar is being recorded and everyone will receive a copy of it tomorrow in your email. So be on the lookout for that. We do have closed captioning this afternoon. So if you want to, if that would be helpful for you, you can go to your toolbar and click CC. They are imperfect, so they are imperfect. So, so just be patient if it's delayed. But if you find it helpful, please do. Today, there will be lots of time for question and answer after Ronnate's presentation. Please use the Q&A box and not the chat for questions specifically about policy. This helps us track them better. And also, if we don't get to your question, we have your name and email and we will follow up with those answers. So once again, please use the Q&A box for questions. All right, now I'm going to pass it over to Ronnate. Hi, Ronnate.
Hi, Meg. I hope you can hear me all well, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Meg, for the introduction. I will dive into this, and as Meg said, there will be plenty of time for questions. I know there's a lot of questions on immigration, and we're here to answer them all. So just to say where we're going in this webinar and what we're going to do. So first, I'll give you all an overview of legislation and where we have been in that legislation, like what is it now and where we want to go with that legislation. Then I will give an update on the administrative wins that we have worked so hard for. And then talk about the border issues. I know that's a lot in the news, and then move on to what do we do next, how we can be helpful. So that's the overview of this presentation. Next slide, please. Meg. So as we dive into legislation today, I just want to make sure that, we all know that sometimes legislation can be dry. It can look like this is happening simply, it's words on a piece of paper, but it's actually, I want to make sure that we all know and we all remember the legislation is by the people. There is a lot that goes into it, and it affects a lot of people. So every day we need to center it on the people that this legislation is meant to service, is meant to be for, because it really does affect us. So we really need to, understand that this is centered on people and people in the United States. So where are we? 77 days into the 117th Congress. There's a lot going on in immigration. And we are happy about that. A couple of bills have been introduced. You can go back to, yes, keep to that slide. A couple of bills have been introduced, and I will talk more about what's in them later on, but just so that we know. The US Citizenship Act, this is the first step towards comprehensive immigration in 8 years. This bill is 353 pages long and has a lot in it. And it is what President Biden outlined in the first days of his office. It was introduced to both in the House and the Senate. The other bill that we are looking at is Citizenship for Essential Workers. It was introduced in the Senate late Monday night by the first Latino senator for California, Senator Padilla. And between last night, when I wrote this up, and now, there has been a change because In the House, it was introduced today by Representative Castro. The DREAM Act has been introduced in the Senate, and its counterpart, the Dream and Promise Act, has been introduced in the House. The Secure Act, which the counterpart is the promise part of the Dream and Promise Act. It looks at TPS, people with TPS and extending TPS. The Secure Act has been introduced in the Senate. And then we have the Farm Workers Modernization Act that was being introduced in the House. So this is where we are at in terms of bill introduction. And now we can see what do those bills do? Can I go to the next slide, please? Basically, what all of these bills have in common is a pathway to citizenship. The US Citizenship Act, so the USCA, looks at all of the undocumented. So, 11 million undocumented immigrants will get their documents under this bill. The other bills break it up into smaller pieces. The Citizenship for Essential Workers Act, 5.2 million. Dreamers and the TPS legislation will have 4 million people who will have a path to citizenship. And the Farm Workers Modernization Act, 1 million undocumented farmers. Undocumented farm workers would get citizenship. And I think we need to pause and understand, or try to understand, what do we mean by a pathway to citizenship? What does it mean for a person? And why are we doing, why do we think that this is so important that we need to focus on it? Basically, what it means is really security. I have thrown the numbers at you of the amount of people who will get this. But for everyone, for especially the undocumented, it means security. It means dignity. In the US, we speak a lot about the dignity of persons, yet we continue to perpetuate systems that strip people of their dignity. In a documented world, being an undocumented person is like being a ghost. You do everything like a regular person, yet your life is suspended in midair. You contribute, but you cannot go back into the past, nor can you go forward into the future. And all you want is really the simple things in life. I am an immigrant. I fled a civil war 10 years ago. And for 7 years, every night, I just prayed for God to let me hold my mother's hand for one day. God has been merciful. I have seen my mother 3 times for the last 4 years. But it has been difficult. All of us have known in the past year what it was to be separated by loved ones, miss births, miss birthdays, or simple Sunday dinners. But just imagine how difficult life is then when I think I'm one of the lucky ones that I have seen my mother 3 times in the last 11 years. Keeping on the issue of COVID, I hope the majority of you have got your vaccine or hope to get your vaccine. But the idea that we can get a vaccine fills us with hope, fills us with plans. We feel that, we could have a barbecue in July. We could have Sunday dinners. The idea that you can be normal again. That is what a pathway to citizenship means. It means living a whole normal life. That is why we must make it our mission to convince our Congress to pass these bills. We're almost there, but we really need to, all of us together, work hard to make it. This time is the time. Next slide, please. So where are we going? In the House, the Dream and Promise Act is going to be, we hope, passed tomorrow. And so is the Farm Workers Modernization Act. yesterday on PBS, they were like, oh, the contentious immigration bills that will be brought to the floor this week. These bills and immigration, citizenship, pathways to citizenship are not contentious. The two bills that I spoke about that will be voted on tomorrow are bipartisan. The Dream and Promise Act was passed in a bipartisan manner last year. The Farm Workers Modernization Act has already 23 sponsors, 12 Republican and 11 Democratic. These are bipartisan issues. Immigration, citizenship is not controversial. We need to keep that in mind when we work and listen and make sure that we get over the finish line. As I told you, the US Citizenship Act has been introduced in the House. We hope that there will be hearings in April and in May. And then the US Citizenship for Essential Workers also in the House, we hope that there will be hearings. Once these bills, once the Dream and Promise Act and the Farm Workers Modernization Act is passed in the House, clearly then we would have to focus on the Senate strategy. The DREAM Act, we are hoping that there will be hearings on the DREAM Act in April and May, and then we will be definitely working on the Secure Act and Citizenship for Essential Workers Act. The counterpart of the Farm Workers Modernization Act is yet to be introduced in the Senate, but we hope that that will be done as soon. So these are the bills that we are focusing on. We are halfway there. Well, yes, almost quarter way there, let's say. But we can, we have to work together to make sure it goes over the finish line. And at the end of this, we will talk about what we can do together to make that happen. And we can move on to the next slide. And I also just wanted to, for a deeper dive of what is in each of these legislation, I can, if you all need to know, I'll answer questions later on today. And it's also in our talking points as well as our leave behinds. So just want to say that. So moving on to administrative wins. There has been many administrative wins, and while of course it is because of the leadership of President Biden, it is also because of the organizing, the bravery, and all of the work that especially immigrants, but immigrant advocates and Black and Brown immigrant advocates and immigrants have done. And so we are proud and happy that our work is having progress and is pushing the leadership. So, and also we need to celebrate the wins when we have them to know just how far we have come. So what's a couple of wins, there has been temporary protected status for Venezuelans. Again, this provided safety for almost 300,000 people from Venezuela. The public charge rule, and if you all recall, this is a rule that where it's moving on or moving through the path to citizenship was going to be means tested. And this public charge had a chilling effect on all of the immigrants, where immigrants, even those who were eligible, would not accept healthcare or would not get vaccinations for their children, or because they were so afraid that they would not be able to access moving on to citizenship because of this public charge rule. So that has been halted, and it was halted because the Department of Justice said they will not pursue litigation on it. And then we have also the White House announced last week, I believe, that there will be no information sharing between ICE, that is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the Health and Human Services Department. And so this is important because the Health and Human Services Department looks after children, and it has been quite a barrier for family members to come forward to support and claim and take those children home, because they have been afraid that, there will be enforcement when they do that and they will be deported. And of course, we have seen the processing of people who were in MPP. That's Migrant Protection Protocols is the official term, but of course we know it has remained in Mexico. In January, one of the president's first acts was to suspend that, and then we have seen the processing of people who were in that program, for lack of a better term, being processed into the US and not put in detention with the UNHCR. The processing is still slow, and there are other issues, but it is definitely a huge win that it is happening at all. So that is our wins, and I think, again, we really need to take the time and celebrate such wins. And while we do that, yes, we know that it's in the news that there apparently is a crisis at our southern border. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, thank you. And that is really not true. This is not a crisis. What is happening is there is a large number of unaccompanied children coming into the US, and unaccompanied children, and it is more because they are taking time to process these children, making sure that they are able to get to their family members. Most of these children have family members, and I'm saying close family members, as in sometimes a parent, a grandmother, an aunt in the US. They have homes. We're not making new homes for them. They have homes here in the US. And the issue has been that there has been a slowness in processing children to make sure they are placed safely. And the issue has been taking the children from the Customs and Border Protection quickly, and then having to keep them in shelters and then push the reunification. There are issues there. Children should not be kept in Customs and Border Protection for more than 72 hours. Right now, because of the slow processing, it is taking more than 100 hours, I believe, 120 hours. But again, we know that both non-governmental organizations that have the skills to work with children are involved. We know that FEMA has been involved. We know that the Red Cross has been involved. We know that Health and Human Services and the administration is being involved. And everyone is working to make sure that these children both get to shelters and then are reunified with their families as soon as possible. So right now it seems like a block, and you will see lots and lots of media which will say, okay, there's a crisis with children coming over, but the communities at the border and all of those who work with children will tell you that this is not really the case. They are working on the issues. So I just want to convey that, and we can talk about that more later if you want. But there is an issue at the border, a big problem, and I will talk more about that now. Next slide. And the big issue on the border is the Title 42 order. So the Title 42 order is a law in this country. It was enacted in 1944 that allows the Surgeon General to close the border for issues of stopping the spread of disease. It has never been used since 1944. It has never been used actually at all after its enactment until last year on March 21st, when President Trump enacted it to say that all excuse me, non-essential travel could not happen at the southern border, and this is only at the southern border. And therefore, they stopped all asylum for anybody at the southern border. Both physicians, public health actors, and lawyers have said, okay, there's no science behind this. Simply stopping asylum at the southern border, and please note, all other travel is allowed. Our avocados are coming in. People who are not asylum seekers who travel are able to go in and out. It's only asylum seekers who are not allowed to come in. And there's no science behind that only such a group of people will bring disease. And then it is also illegal. Asylum is a right, and asylum is a right that can and has to be allowed by international law and even US laws. However, despite this being the issue, it is still in place. Every day, hundreds of people are being expelled because of this. And when we hear about deportations now, we are hearing about being expelled. And expelled means that nobody gets any due process. You cannot say that you have a fear of going back. You cannot say, there's no due process of your case at all. This expelling of people has sort of caused a bottleneck, and sort of it's a building up pressure. This is, as I said, it has been enacted for a year. And today, each day, we're having 100 to 200 people being expelled. We have had 100 to 200 people being expelled every day for a year. And it's just basically people are going back, not to where they came from, but at the border and creating pressure. This affects Black immigrants much more, because Black immigrants, especially immigrants from Haiti or immigrants from Cameroon or Mauritania, they are being sent back to their country. They are being expelled back to their country, which, as you know, is not, and especially in Haiti, we know that, the political situation in Haiti is bad. The humanitarian issues are huge, and simply sending people back to those countries without due process is a huge issue. These people are being kept in terrible conditions. The Haitian Bridge Alliance and others have told us about how there's one lady, this is just an emblematic case of everything that's happening. Christine, she was raped in Haiti, and so the only place she could get to quickly was Chile. She made her way to the southern border and crossed with her baby. And then she was kept in a jail cell for 8 days. She wasn't able to change her clothes or change her baby for 8 days. And then they were only given beans and tortillas, and then they were simply put on a plane and expelled back to Haiti. As Ruben Garcia of Annunciation House said, this is the new war. Title 42 is the new war. And again, asylum at the border, people coming into the border is normal. It's something that the United States has done. And it doesn't matter the numbers, as in, right now everybody's like, oh my gosh, 100,000 people are being arrested at the border. But this country has processed 650,000 asylum seekers at the border before. And this was 20 years ago. So, things at the border, there is much more people who are there to welcome. There are communities who are there to welcome our brothers and sisters, asylum seekers. And these are communities that can do it. We don't have to take networks or my word for it. We have both, as I said, Ruben Garcia from Annunciation House, Sister Norma, all of the Jesuits working on both sides of the border, the Kino border Initiative, the Hope Border Institute, all of those organizations are at the border, and they are able and willing to support the government to do this. So the fact that we are then expelling so many people to so much hardship is unconscionable, and that's something that we need to work towards to end, actually. Because otherwise it's just going to be more and more of a pressure context, and then we will have more and more of, oh my gosh, there's a crisis at the border. There are hordes coming over. And this kind of rhetoric will definitely affect the passage of the bills. It'll affect the ideas and all of that that we see every day in our lives here. And we don't want to go back to that. So this is clearly a pressing issue to end Title 42, and we definitely hope that we will work together to make sure that it ends soon, now, basically. I know I've spoken a lot, and just one more slide before I hand it over to Megan, what we can do to ensure we can work on this. So one is to understand and remind ourselves and remind our neighbors that there is no crisis at the border because of children coming in, because there are too many people coming in. Clearly, this is something, as I said, the rhetoric, as Representative Escobar from El Paso said yesterday, the rhetoric is xenophobic. It also has a chilling effect on the passage of any bills. And we have seen this kind of rhetoric for the past actually 10 to 12 years. And if we really want to change it, this is the year to do it. And the way to do it is to talk to people and explain to people, this is not the true way that it's happening. And then we will have to ask President Biden to rescind Title 42, and then move on to legislation. Please do call your representative. Network has our Lenten Ask, and our Lenten Ask this week is to call our representative to vote for the bills in the House, HR 6, that's the Dream and Promise Act, and HR 1603, which is the Farm Worker Modernization Act, and to make sure they vote yes tomorrow. Then after, there's always lots to do. And the other one is to call your members of Congress to support the US Citizenship Act and Citizenship for Essential Workers. We hope that, this is the year. I promised Sister Simone, that I would try my best to make sure that this is the year, and we will do it together, that there will be immigration reform. So with that hopeful thought, I will pass it on to Meg and be available for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ronnate, for both explaining so clearly what is all happening, because it's so much, as we've talked about, and also adding that very deep personal stories, both of your own and what's happening with individuals down at the border, providing us with that sense of encounter, even over webinar. So we do have a few questions here. So I know you said at the beginning that these bills for pathway to citizenship are bipartisan. Is that true in the Senate as well as the House?
In terms of support in the Senate, the DREAM Act is bipartisan. Senator Graham is on that. And right now, the focus is to have both Republicans and Democrats support that. In terms of senators, when we talk bipartisan, and if we talk in terms of senators, will comprehensive immigration at this time be bipartisan in terms of senators? No, it's not. We don't have support from both sides. But what is bipartisan is that, in poll after poll of registered voters, of citizens in key states, we see that getting citizenship to immigrants, or having pathways to citizenship to immigrants is bipartisan. So we just need to, I feel that it is an uphill battle, that we need to remind senators who they represent, and that the issue is bipartisan, even though in the Senate, we're not seeing that right now.
Great, thank you. So this is just a question about the Secure Act in the Senate. Can you remind us what the counterpart is in the House and how those two are related, please?
Yes. So the Secure Act in the Senate is on temporary protected status. And so the counterpart in the House is a part of the Dream and Promise Act. So the Dream and Promise Act in the House, the dream part of the Dream and Promise Act is for dreamers, DACA holders, and the promise part is for people who have temporary protected status. So that's where the match happens.
Okay, thank you. So a little bit more shifting or about the Senate in general. Because, you know, as you said, the things are going to be trickier in the Senate, especially with that bipartisan aspect. Are there key specific senators that Network is focusing on to get all of these bills passed?
Yes, I think there are key senators. One is, of course, is to make sure that the senators that have supported these bills before continue to support them. And, you know, because of the rhetoric, as I was saying, it is so important and to tamp that down. Even Democratic senators are very skittish, are not wanting to be out there to support these bills. So our first focus is to focus on senators who have supported these bills before, and to make sure that, and so those senators, I can name a few, would be the Democratic senators, Senator Peters, Senator Stabenow. Those are like two of those of the senators who have supported this before. The other Democratic senators that we'll be looking at is Senator Kelly. He's a new senator, but has been worried about immigration, even though immigrants voted him in. So we need to remind him of that. And then, of course, we will be looking at Republican senators. Senator Graham is already on the DREAM Act, as I said. Senator Romney, Senator Portman, those are the important senators that I can think of from the top of my head.
Great, thank you. Okay, so going over to Title 42, we have right on here that we need to ask President Biden to rescind the order. Is this something that is this something that our field can get involved in? Are there talking points that that we have that if people want to write letters, or how would they participate in this asking the president?
So there are two ways. Yes, there are talking points. We can send them to you after this or with this presentation. And there is a petition, not by Network, but there's a petition by Log where you could both contact the president as well as your senators and members of Congress. And why is it important that they know about it? Is because they obviously they are feeling the pressure that this Title 42 is causing this. It's not a backlog. It's actually causing all this pressure on the border, and they can also pass that pressure on to the administration. So that is why we would want you to actually talk about it to both the president and also to members of Congress.
Great, thank you. And one more question about Title 42. So if this is being enforced right now, how are people who are under MPP being processed?
So it's two different laws, I guess. It's two different regulations. Title 42, as I said, is a specific law that has been enacted for 1 year. MPP was a specific regulation that was administrative presidential order that was enacted by President Trump. So there are two different programs. So if if myself and the MPP was only for a certain year, for a certain couple of years, I think it was for 2 years. So if at that time when you came to the border, you were part of, you met the criteria. So one of it is that you can't be Mexican. The second thing was, yes, you could only be from Central America. So you met the criteria to be put into what we would assume was an MPP program. Then you would be in that process. For the last year, if you came to the border, you were not going to be put into, this is from March of last year, you were not going to be put into the MPP. You were going to simply be expelled. And you have no paperwork. So when you're in the MPP, you got a piece of paper, hopefully most people did, saying, your case is under review. But Title 42, you get nothing. You're just, literally thrown back over the border.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you see supposed high numbers too, because, somebody is thrown over the border. It is a highly dangerous place. You try to come back in, you're caught again.
Right.
So that's the difference between these two programs.
So I think just to clarify, is Title 42 right now blocking anyone from cross, like
asylum seekers? Yes.
Asylum seekers.
Any asylum seekers. Yes, that's what it's blocking.
Okay, thank you. So lots of concern, and I'm so glad that you very clearly and assuredly stated that the unaccompanied children on the border are not the crisis. But there is a lot of concern about that out there from our viewers. And so I want to address this first, because a lot of questions of how do we counteract these stories? And I think, right, we do see it a lot in the media. I even saw, the children crisis at the border, in a more progressive paper just last night. So what we need to do is take advantage of this moment and write those letters to the editor, right? We can say that we know that the children at the border are not a crisis, are not the crisis. And that's really important, right? I think talking about Title 42. But Ronnate, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Just, to add to that, I think yes, it is on us, as Meg said. Just to reiterate what Meg said, it is on us at this point. We cannot rely on, liberal media or illiberal media, because I think all of us have been trying to educate. Some of the, for example, in the Washington Post, I could, say we had a long conversation yesterday that, despite our efforts to educate some of the journalists there, we are still getting this whole crisis at the border. So it is up to us, and we can speak out and make a difference. And it's not just like us, but we can also uplift and amplify what people are saying on the ground. As I said, there's enough communities on the border who are welcome and are able to deal with this. And so we just simply also need to uplift what they're saying.
Great. And Network is definitely uplifting this in our social media, but I think this is an invitation for everyone to really step in and be the trusted source, right? The trusted constituents that know what's happening for your lawmakers, and also the trusted members of the community to talk to your friends and neighbors about this as much as possible. So we will continue being the truth tellers about what is happening on the border. So we are getting close to our time together, but goodness, we have so many great questions. And I will definitely pass these on to Ronnate so that she can answer some of these more detailed ones. But just kind of ending on this like larger view, global note, and hopefully even continued hope. So what does this long-term structural immigration reform look like for our nation, Ronnate? What is ideal immigration policy in the United States?
So I think it's a longer conversation, but ideally, there are like three areas I think that we would need to change. One is to ensure that our southern border, the way we look at, the way we act, and the way we act at, and I'm saying the way US citizens and US government acts at the southern border, we would want it to be like our northern border. There are, every year we have around 100,000 people immigrating from our northern border. But why do we not hear about this? So it is clearly, so that is one, I think, in terms of aspirational, that is where, and ability, we obviously know we can do it. If we can do it at the northern border, we can definitely do it at the southern border. That is one way. The second one would be, not to take away the fear. The fact that someone else is able to get citizenship does not take anything away from us. We need to understand that. We need to spread the word. And if only once we take that away and look at this as an issue that is solvable, that we can actually sit down and have a discussion without fear mongering. And, the immigration and movement of people is something that has been happening forever. And it is also something that continues to happen, not just in the US, but everywhere. And looking at it without without fear mongering, I think is most important, and therefore simplifying this. There is, when you look at immigrant, and there are myriad ways that we can simplify. And I'll just give you one example. For if you come as a child and you are with your family made, you become a citizen as a child, when you turn 18, you are supposed to, again, reapply. It's just one form, but it's $1,000. And you have to fill one form out and make sure you do it. If you have done this as a citizen, you have become a citizen at 3, are you going to remember when you are 18 that you are supposed to do this, right? And a lot of people then move in. This is something that is just small, but that is complicated. We can change this. It doesn't have to be this way. So there are those little things that we can do to simplify. It is not hard. And, I would definitely welcome a longer discussion on this. And it is something that we will have.
Wonderful. I think some of our folks would, I think everyone on here would welcome that as well. But all right. Well, I hope that this was at least a really good grounding for where we are right now and thinking about what is going to happen moving forward. So just some quick upcoming opportunities. As Ronnate said, the Dream and Promise Act and the Farm Workforce Modernization Act are going to be, hopefully the House will vote on them tomorrow, right? So if you haven't made your call already, regardless of what side of the aisle your representative sits on, they need to hear from you. They need to know that we support these bills. So please call your representative today for that final push across. We want to make sure we get as much bipartisan support as possible. And then I invite you to save the date. Network is going to have a virtual fly-in for our members to come and talk with offices on the Hill. You do such amazing in-district work so much of the year, so much of our time together. And so we're virtually going to bring you to the Hill. And those days are May 11th and 12th. And you'll be receiving a formal email invitation, probably multiple times, starting right after Easter. So stay tuned on that. So once again, you will definitely be receiving the recording of this webinar. It sounds like definitely want to send the link to the petition about Title 42 and continue with some talking points, especially around what we can say to counteract both, just the rumors about the crisis at the border, what's really happening, but then also this larger sense of how we need to move forward as a nation. So thank you so much for joining us, Ronnate. Thank you for just taking this time to explain all of these complicated moving parts to us. If you haven't signed up for network action alerts, please do. And, we are always available to go deeper with you, to go further with you. We can give more presentations, especially as we're preparing, if you want to take more action on this, how to lobby and things like that. And I definitely encourage everyone to become a member of Network and to just support this wonderful work. So thank you so much. I know we have at least 15 questions that we need to get answered. So we will follow up with you on those, my friends who have submitted all these questions, because they are very good. So thank you. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your day. Happy St. Patrick's Day to those who are celebrating. So, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.